your insulation standards are ridiculously higher than ours.
Yeah.
Like, for your bat size, ours is probably like R6
In the
would
walls.
be the maximum. No, in the roof. So like we're like
We're like
R2. R2. Yeah, that's right. That's what I mean. Like,
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Make Trades Great Again podcast. Andy and Eric here. We have special guest Luke with us. Last episode, Luke, we talked for an hour about your business and everything like that. And then we stopped recording. And what happened, Andy? When we stopped recording, it's like magic.
It's like the conversation sauce is kicking in.
Oh my gosh, the conversation kept going and got better and better. And so we hit record again. We're going to have a second episode with Luke here. Thanks for joining us, man.
oh, thank you. It's been a privilege.
Andy, I'm gonna hand it over to you. You were talking water heaters, you talked refrigerant, stuff like that. What's going on in Australia? Why don't you pose that question to Luke and we'll get going?
Yeah, in our conversation, we had talked about CO2 refrigerant. It just briefly came up, and it dawned on me. I was like, well, I know here in North America, 410A is on the way out. R22's been out for 10 years now. And, we're starting to see some of these newer hybrid refrigerants coming in. And I was curious, is that the same thing in Australia? Are you guys coming along the same, I guess, progression?
Definitely. So a lot of our air conditioning has changed from 410 to R32. Hot water heat pumps, commercially, probably CO2, majority of them. Some domestic units are a lot more expensive, like the EcoCute, like the Sandons, the Reclaims, all those sort of styles. They're CO2. And obviously with the pressures, like they reheat so much quicker because everything in refrigeration is pressure-temperature relationship, obviously. So, but we had a lot of cheap units coming through when this heat pump craze went up for hot water that was still R1348. It just didn't work. Cold climates, like you're waiting hours for, your tank to reheat. A lot changed to R290, so propane. Made it a lot better. Boiled off at a lower temperature, worked a lot better. Now the market's sort of sitting at hot water heat pumps all in ones. So, not separate condenser or separate compressor system to the tank is probably R290, so propane. Okay. And then your more expensive heat pump hot water service, would be CO2.
Like the split systems, like what we're most of North America isn't familiar, but I got to install one and we're starting to see them gain a little bit of traction. But the split system water heaters, those are like the Sandon.
Yeah, so Sandon, like that's the EcoCute that I was sort of saying before. I always reference it to that because I feel like it's based off this Japanese EcoCute design where they'll like the Sandon, and then over here Reclaim sort of took over, and it's all the same thing. And now Therman, which is a brand from Reese, they have a very similar system. And in my mind, it's all the same sort of system. It's just like, we've finished with this version, you can have it now, and then they go on from that way. But all CO2, thicker copper, all self-contained outdoor units.
Right. So those are like monoblock. It's all the refrigerants in the outdoor unit.
Yeah. So there was some very cheap units that were not monoblock. So it was like like an air conditioner almost. It had the tank and it had a coil in the tank, and it would pump refrigerant. And I think they've just had heaps of faults with them. So
that we see on the split systems, I think the primaries are all monoblock. Our indoor units, and you guys probably have those, air source heat pumps that derive the heat from inside the building. Do you have those as well? Like the heat pump is on top of the tank?
The all-in-one, yeah.
The all-in-one, but we'll still have them outside. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of ours are yours, and it's a funny thing. A lot of our all-in-ones, they say you must install this externally, but now they're starting to come out with, well, if you have so much volume in the room, you can put them inside. And obviously over there, like it gets so cold, you couldn't do that. It just they'd die if they were outside. So
well, where Andy and I live, there's no outdoor plumbing. Like none. It's not even a consideration. Anything that would be exposed to the elements has to be winterized, and of course then you aren't relying on using it during that part of the year. No chance. We have basements where we live. We dig holes to get below the frost so we don't freeze our house.
Well, it makes so much sense. Even with like our sand and our CO2 or our split system units, I believe you can go 10 meters from the condenser unit to pretty much a tank. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you put your tank inside? It's insulated. It's not, you're not losing all this hot water just to ambient temperature that cools down the tank and the insulation and everything else. It's like, put the tank inside, put it in a safe tray, put it where it, can't leak, or in a laundry or something with a floor waste, and then put the outdoor unit outside and it can do its work and your tank's insulated and you're not having all these heat losses from cold ambient temperatures.
Yeah. Speaking of the split systems, Andy, you've done a sand in, maybe a couple of them.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the whole concept of it.
I think it's a really cool technology. I wish I could sell more of them.
Yeah.
And we're kind of at that balance point where it's kind of a boutique item. It's got a price point that makes it hard for our customers, especially anybody that's got natural gas, to look anywhere but natural gas. If they're on propane or don't have natural gas available, so that they've got they got to go propane, straight up electric or oil, something like that. I mean, that's where we're seeing that kind of coming in, but an electric tank water heater is so cheap, the cost, that it's hard to get people to, kind of sign on to do that split heat pumps design.
I got a question for you, Luke, regarding these types of systems. Like for hot water, for example, heat pump water heaters and stuff like we're talking about. How is it handled? Are there incentive programs like rebates, things like that from your power companies or your utilities, things like that? Do they offer to the owner some type of incentive to maybe change technology, upgrade to more efficient systems, or is that not really been put in place in Australia?
No, definitely. No, it's been in place for a few years. So Victoria, the state, has been probably more anti-gas, and definitely now, like, they've banned it. So, or they're putting in recent bans that if you own your own house and your hot water dies, they're starting to say, well, you can't replace it with another gas unit. It's just it's against like the state law almost. And then they had that for heating as well and cooking, and they sort of overturned that. And now with hot waters, they've got sub clauses. So if you've got a small tankless unit or a continuous flow unit, and you just purely don't have the room for a tank to sit there, well, then you might be able to get around it. And that's coming in the next couple of years. South Australia is really good. So they say like an efficiency sort of system. So if you put in like a 5-star or a 6-star or 7-star tankless unit, well, then you're kind of on par, they believe, with like a heat pump unit. But then they've also got, if you had a 400-litre resistance element electric tank, well, now you've got to change it just to a 250. So that it's so weird because we're one country, but there's so many different state laws that change. So, but there's big incentives, massive incentives, and the sad thing
big,
is,
like how, like compared, like relative to the cost of installing the equipment, having it done, hiring it fully out by a contractor. What are the incentives? Like, like Andy's right now dealing with a heat pump rebate for water heaters that like pays for
$4,700.
Like,
so we had
air source.
Some of the cheap units you'd pay 34 Australian dollars, and that put a unit in. So it was like, and that's what I was saying to people. I'm like, well, how long are you going to be in this house? And they're like, well, we want to sell it next year. And it's like, all right, your hot water's failed. Why don't you just go with one of these cheap rebates? It'll cost you like under $50. You get hot water back in the house. It might last for 2 to 3 years, but you've got hot water again. And, you can sell the house and it's all settled. But that's kind of the bad thing, because they use all their rebates up on this cheap system and then they can't use them again. So people would be like, well, I don't want to pay so much for a sand-in, or I don't want to, where their rebates would still take a lot of the price off. So they go, well, I can get this one for almost next to nothing. I'll go with that. And then in 3 years, they go, well, this has failed. Now what do we do? I have to pay, 5,000 or 6,000 Australian dollars to get another heat pump put in.
Right.
So whereas like in comparison, say if you had a tankless system and it was 20 years old, like Renaults will last 20 to 25 years old here. And they might go, well, I'll put another Renault tankless on. Might cost them 1,500 to 2,000 Australian dollars. And you might get another 10 to 20 years of that. It's burning natural gas. So a lot of people are being told, well, you shouldn't burn natural gas anymore. You should, put in a heat pump. So they'll spend the extra money on that and then see how it goes, I guess.
I love this heat pump stuff. The problem I have is like we're kind of it's totally related to what you were just talking about, and like Andy brought up, it's hard to compete with electricity versus natural gas, and we're not banning it yet here, but the industry is definitely moving that direction. And I don't want to be that old timer, be like complaining, but the reality is this: with a gas water heater, for example, it's even easier to heat your house with a gas furnace too, like versus a heat pump, like which I'm doing a heat pump now, but like it's just so the performance that's what you have with like a gas tankless water heater. Like it doesn't matter how big your family is. It doesn't you know what I mean? Like it's
or temperature control. Like in our last episode where we talked about like, having kids and stuff. Like when our daughter was younger, we'd set our bathroom controller to 38 degrees and set the bath limit to, I think it was like 80 litres. So once that stopped, it would just turn off the hot water. Or if she was in the shower, we'd say, all right, we've got 38 degrees. Didn't have to worry about it burning herself or anything like that. As far as I know, you can't do that with any like tank system or heat pump system. You can't regulate the temperature of the water coming out of it without risking, you're storing cold water or lukewarm water and you've got bacteria and everything else growing in there. So
yeah, you have to turn them up, and then you have to use, like, if you want to have that regulation, you have to use those like tempering valves, like a mixing valve on them, just to keep them safe. Also, I think my approach with these systems, even the split system, which the performance on that thing, like the Sandin unit, like I was amazed how fast that thing starts making hot water.
It's wild.
It's crazy quick. And that's the beauty of that pressure temperature relationship of CO2. It's the pressures of it are so high that your recovery temperature is so quick.
Well, I think we saw it, Eric, with that, like with the Viessmann air to water heat pump too.
Yeah.
It's that outdoor monoblock design, and that one uses R32 as well. But it was, it was really interesting to see, like you say, how fast. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that we've got this controlled volume of water. We can make a high delta T heat and inject that into a storage tank essentially, and it just works.
It's pretty cool. The speaking of that, you brought up the Viessmann. You brought up the air to water heat pump system for space heating,
right?
I'm going to be putting one of their mini splits in my house and my shop. Sorry. And I was just looking at the specs on that. It's funny because their space heating unit that you came out to Minnesota to help me install is R32, but they're right.
Yeah.
And their mini split systems are 454.
Yeah. Well, and that's a carrier thing. So, I mean, I think that that's probably where they're at. Well, I don't know that. I'm assuming that Viessmann mini split in North America is probably a rebranded carrier, which is somebody else. I don't know. Could be Medea.
I think it's Medea.
Hard sand.
Yeah.
We have a lot of the same thing here. Medea and Gree.
Yeah. And so where we had determined that Viessmann air to water heat pump was manufactured for them, and being a monoblock, they may just be like, well, whatever, you guys make the package and make it work. That is interesting that they would have different lines across the board, but I think from what we know of Viessmann, they have not been a refrigeration company in the past.
Right.
They've been a boiler company or a water heating company that's primarily gas and electric. So the refrigerant side is new.
Do you have a lot of the flammability side of it too. So that's a big thing here. So it's like everyone's scared of R290 and R32 because they're like, oh, these flammability limits. It's an A2L, they call it here. So no, they're flammable refrigerant. So, and then we've got an A3, which is the crazy ones, but it's just like at first when the R32 splits started coming out here, you had to weld all your indoor tails. You couldn't have flares inside a wall. You couldn't have flares inside a room that was a certain volume because they're like, well, that's a flammable refrigerant. And what if it leaks inside the room? It's going to blow up. And everyone's going, well, I've got a propane or a natural gas heater in that same room. What if that leaks? It's... and then there's specific underfloor models that have got sensors. So they're R32 and underfloor ducted system. And they go, this is this, and we've got sensors to detect if there's a refrigerant leak. And there's an old LPG gas heater sitting right next to it that's got 2 45 kilo bottles sitting outside that could just continue leaking in. But this ducted might have 3 kilos of refrigerant in it that once it leaks, it's gone. It's
flammability is like basically doesn't even support an open flame.
No,
it's flammable, but it wouldn't burn like gas at all.
With the oxygen sitting there, it just goes puff, and that's it's so funny because that's a scare tactic to feel what they're kind of bringing in with it, right? And then they've realized, hang on a second,
I was listening to a podcast here a while back, and there was somebody was explaining that, and they were like, we did this really nice custom home remodel. And so the house, great big custom home, had a 2.5 inch medium pressure gas line, natural gas line coming into it. Served the pool and snow melt and, 500,000 BTUs of boilers and all this stuff. And they put in a new forced air cooling system. And it was, R454, Mitsubishi or whatever it was. Doesn't really matter. But the inspector came in and they're like, you have to have a mitigation system in here, to do this. And they were like, well, but, the house is huge. And they're like, yeah, but these individual rooms that are served with a duct off of this unit are under this, square footage or whatever. And they were arguing with this inspector that literally this makes no sense at all, that you want me to put in a gas or an exhaust fan in this like closet because it's got a duct off of this unit that could introduce a mildly flammable refrigerant into this room. But I have a 2.5 inch, 1 pound gas line that's connected to like, the entire Earth's natural gas supply.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, it's endless at that point. But we don't care about that. We're not even mildly concerned that we have a natural gas leak detector even on the property, let alone a mitigation system for something that holds 4 pounds of refrigerant.
It's this whole topic and argument and this enforcement against kind of approach is like cutting your nose off despite your face, right? It's like it's just focusing hyper attention on something because it's different and trying to justify some sort of action that seemingly makes no sense when you apply it to any other scenario, like you're saying, right? It just doesn't make any sense.
The whole electrification process sort of does that to me in some ways. Like you look at the whole aspect of it, is it green from the very start? Probably not. Is manufacturing gas appliances from the start, very green from the start, or burning everything else? But it's like you need to look at the whole picture. And it's funny because I was talking to an electrician that specializes in, he does all the switchgear in the wind turbines. And he was saying to me, well, I need to recover this refrigerant that cools the switchgear. I said, oh yeah. And he told me what it was. And it was like 13 times worse for the environment than R22.
Oh.
I was like, hang on a second. So this is used in wind turbines that are meant to be green for the environment. But if that leaks, it's 13 times worse than R22, which is already very bad for the environment. So how does that sell as the whole picture?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't work.
So, well, to be clear, I don't want it to sound like what I just said is like, anti technology.
definitely. But
Right.
yeah,
I'm not making that argument that I think holds zero water, by the way, of, well, the batteries for your electric vehicle are going to need, I think that that's the most propagandized by the oil company message out there that also isn't true, by the way.
Right.
But so I don't want that to sound like
no,
we're focusing on it and it's not worth focusing on either. It's just like you said, Andy, we're going to start having to do some kind of fire suppression, ventilation, shut the system down because, oh my gosh. And I laugh because where I live, Luke, in central Minnesota here, most of the state of Minnesota has natural gas. 80% of its, of the, households have natural gas in the state of Minnesota. That's a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And all but 20% are using, you can use the same fuel source. That means that every house in my neighborhood and anywhere around here, put it this way, it would be rare to not see all the appliances in a home be natural gas from at least, let's say up until, 2020s when we started looking at switching things from gas, right? And so this whole refrigerant talk and flammability, and I mean, one misplaced screw in a wall and an unprotected pipe could literally mean disaster.
They've had it this whole time already.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. It is. That's what I was sort of, I guess, referencing to before. It's someone needs to come in and just be like, oh, let's look at all the facts. Let's not just cherry pick different great parts about it. And like you said, no one will ever mention that about natural gas. But all of a sudden with flammability and refrigerants, they're like, oh, you got to be very scared because this is R32 or this is R290. And you're like, R290 is propane. You've had 9 kilo bottles out the back, or you've had propane on your house for the last 30 years. It's safe. It's not. Yeah. You don't have to be worried about it.
Well, that was the thing that, I went and sat in on an early A2L class. This is probably 2 years ago, right as they were first really unveiling all this stuff. And they were talking about mitigation systems, well, you got to have, every bedroom has to have an exhaust fan, and every crawl space where there's equipment has to have an exhaust fan, and they're all tied together. And I was like, I'm not even going to sell another air conditioner if this is the case.
Yeah, we're done.
Because the mitigation system for the potential leak that probably isn't really going to do anything is going to cost as much as the air conditioning system.
Oh,
right. It doesn't. And I'm going to, so in terms of being green and efficient, you want me to put basically a fart fan or a bathroom fan in each bedroom, connected outside with some ductwork. Yeah. So let's put another hole in the wall. And connect that to a piece of ducted equipment that has probably the lowest efficiency of any appliance in our homes.
You're offsetting all those benefits. Let's just feed cold air into the house and then try heat it.
I'm going to stop. Yeah. I'm going to stop selling heating and cooling equipment. I'm just going to start selling windows now.
Right.
Yeah. Look at this window goes up. It goes down. It's open.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because... that reminds me of a point I was thinking about earlier is your insulation standards are ridiculously higher than ours.
Yeah.
For your bat size, per, area.
The R value per inch.
Yeah. So ours is probably R6.
In the wall.
Would be the maximum. No, in the roof. So we're R2. R2. Yeah, that's right. That's what I mean. And I looked into it because I saw on
we're R30 in our walls minimum.
Yeah, and I saw on LinkedIn a guy that did air testing, quality of the house and everything, and air sealing. And he's mentioning these R values. I was like, 30, 50, this. So I looked into the actual, per square inch of R value and what it corresponds to. And roughly in the walls, it was our R2.5 is about the same as what yours is. But the ceiling space, ours was ridiculous. And it's we're a cold climate as well, but we're wasting all this money on heating and cooling because our houses are just drafty and not designed for it. It's the same in Europe. They're designed for winter, so their houses are really good. but they hit a summer and it's like they hold the heat as well, I feel.
Yeah. It's interesting, Eric, and you probably remember this from back, early days of
He's calling
your
me old.
career.
He's calling me old right now.
Do you remember Super Good Sense?
Yeah.
Do you remember hearing that Super Good Sense homes?
Or
right?
has
So
the
it was
dementia
this-
kicked in and you can't.
Yeah, right. Dementia was, yeah. Jeez.
Oh my God. I thought we only picked on Chad around here.
No. I'm open to picking on whoever.
Equal opportunity.
Yeah, that's right.
Opportunity bullying. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Super Good Sense homes came about in the early 80s or early 90s, rather late 80s, early 90s. And so the initiative was super insulate everything, right? Get rid of the drafts, get rid of all this stuff.
Yep.
And so what they ended up doing is we vapor barriered houses, right? Like, so put all this insulation on, put these vapor barriers in there and keep the moisture from moving. And we're going to regulate this otherwise loosely built home. And the problem with it is we didn't ventilate. This was the advent of HRVs and ERVs.
Yeah, this was late 90s.
Yeah. So that came after we built Super Good Sense homes for about 10 years and then realized they were all full of mold because they didn't breathe, right? These insulated structures were cold on the outside and warm and moist on the inside. And so you'd condense all this moisture in between the drywall and the insulation.
Your windows would have like water running down them.
Yeah. And so then somebody came along and was like, you need to introduce a fresh air, makeup air because these houses are too tight. So we went from drafty homes that we heated with, bottles and jugs and barrels of oil.
Yeah.
To a house that we didn't take a lot of heat, but then we had to put a hole in the side of the house to get some air in it.
Don't make it sound like it was a bad thing. I feel like
it wasn't.
I feel like
it wasn't, but it was
progress.
It was a good thing.
It was, but it was fun. It's funny now looking back at how we went from, this isn't such a big deal to we're going to build it really tight to we need to ventilate it to now we're back, flip that again to, well, don't just put a hole in it, and you see this with the build show guys. And it's fascinating to me to watch the what the minimal extent of the code is, right? Like this is what you can just chop a hole in it and stick an electrical box through the outdoor wall. And you don't really have to seal it. I mean, you can, but you don't have to. And then you watch like build show guys, and it's got flashing tape around it and it's spray foamed around the inside. Now it's an insulated box and, and then we're not going to even put penetrations in the full wall, right? The box is on the outside and, it's in this chaseway or whatever. And it's just fascinating to see this extreme in such a short period of time. I mean, I guess I'm talking 30 years, but
it's relatively short period of time. The technology has gotten better, but the understanding of how to build has gotten so much that has heightened. The industry is leveled up on, okay, we know how important it is now. These builders that are paying attention, they know how important it is that these houses are so airtight that in some cases they're building to a standard of net zero energy. Like the building itself produces all the energy it needs to operate. And so, the only way to get to that point is to seal these things up, to build wall assemblies that have massive R values that are just so incredibly efficient at keeping things in or out, right? And then, the extent that the gymnastics and the learning and the like experimentation and implementation and getting it right in the field for like ventilation is so important. But you do have the old heads that are like, oh, we didn't have to do this and we were fine. And we were like, no, we weren't. Because the house I grew up in, I grew up in two houses. One was well over 100 years old. So you can imagine, like you could just, wintertime, which is 7 months of the year here, you could sit in any room in the house and just feel a draft.
You can
and
see
then I had
breath.
Yeah. Like you can't have candles near the outside wall.
You put some.
But then the opposite, I lived in, again, we're talking a century ago, back in the 1900s. I lived in a house that was new. It was built in 1990, like 1990. And I was in, I was still in grade school or whatever. And here, this was a modern home. And by today's standards, garbage,
Yeah.
but yet it
We're
was
seeing a
better
lot
than
of
the
that now.
150-year-old house that we lived in prior to that. Right.
Right.
And now, you get the people that are like, oh, we didn't have to have that. And it was, they resist it. But you're looking at there's a movement now in our building industry to build so much more tight and healthy. And there's benefits to it. Like, it's not just about lowering your energy costs.
Right.
No, we're seeing a lot of that now. So we're seeing a lot of this. They call it a passive house.
Yeah,
movement.
sure. Yep.
So it breathes on its own. It's controlled breathing pretty much. And like you were saying before, it's like back in the day, it used to be like, we used to need all these exhaust vents and ventilation vents. And it's just like, well, hang on a second. Why don't we control that with the HRV or an ERV and be like, well, instead of opening a window or having 60 vents in the house, breathing in all this fresh air, why don't we have a system that says, all right, well, I'll exhaust all this air and we'll go through a four-way heat exchanger and we'll dump all the cold, humid air outside and I'll bring in the hot air from inside that's dry and I'll replace it and everyone's happy. You've got your CO2 levels are down.
Yeah.
The house breathes. There's no mold. It all works. But we went through the same thing. It's just like, well, let's seal everything up. So renovations here, they're just like, well, let's seal everything up. Let's put an exhaust fan in that can suck the house out 3 times over. And the poor little natural draft heater that was sitting in the corner was just like, well, where's my oxygen? So it would start actually dragging carbon monoxide and flue gas through the flue into the home because the exhaust gas or the exhaust fan was trying to suck it back in. So, but now I feel like we're at that shifting point where the builders are catching up, but some of them are really there, but it's a money point. They're just like, I want a very efficient home. But you get up into the ceiling space a year later and all the ducting, we use a lot of flexible ducting for our like air conditioning and everything else. It's just all kinked over and squashed and it's like, well, you're not getting your air movement there, you're not getting air change, you're not getting efficiency.
Yeah.
And they wonder why their brand new 7-star houses aren't working correctly. So,
well, there's some product lines out there that are either coming from other company or countries, or they're not yet common in our marketplace, like those Zender systems and those. I mean, these ventilation systems they're 2-3 levels above just a standard ERV or HRV. Like these massive systems that are ducted to every single room in the house with the flex, coordinated piping and stuff like that, and like ultra not refrigeration, filtration. Like it's amazing,
and everything.
Yeah, and we're not even like those are the percentage being installed versus the other equipment that has just now sort of been the default common. The ERV, HRV kind of setup, these other systems, they're tiny percentage of the market share, right?
Yeah.
And yet, I wonder if that statement would still be true like 10 years from now or 20 years from now, because those systems are nicer. They're way better. Like you're talking about, HEPA filtration, pulling air in and doing that heat exchange so it's not affecting your indoor loads and things like that. And they're amazing.
And that's what I've looked at here. Like, to be honest, if we were, like I said earlier, we sold our house to sort of benefit the business, but then we're looking at buying again. And I was like, well, if I put a ducted system in, I could pair that ducted with a HRV system and say I'm on cooling and the outside air temperature drops below 18 degrees or below a certain set point, it just starts dragging in fresh air from outside. So the compressor's just gone down to pretty much zero capacity. The outdoors shut off. It's just letting through filtered outside air, conditioning the house. So your cooling loads drop to nothing. But it's not just windows open, it's carbon filtered outside air. So
we use, in commercial buildings, we use economizers, and it's that same thing. You do, latent cooling, and you're able to do, basically free cooling with outdoor air. We don't do that in residential though. It's interesting. And the HRV concept is really interesting. And it's strange to me that we don't allow like 1,000 CFM HRVs. Right. Or not that we don't allow it, but we don't utilize that application. Eric and I in the northern climates, I mean, me for sure. If I looked at my weather here right now, I'm 57 degrees and probably, 19% humidity. It's nothing. It's the perfect environment to do cooling, where Eric might be, 75 degrees and 75% humidity. And that's not perfect outdoor air, in terms of trying to provide a cool, comfortable space. So that is interesting.
So we're at 11 degrees, 78% humidity at the moment. So, if you go through your RH of, you want 50, 22 is what we say is like comfortable here is 50% relative humidity, 22 degrees. So.
Yeah, I basically live in the desert. It's not, but that's a lot of it.
Where I'm from in Vic, it's sort of desert, but here it's coastal, so we get that bump. So,
since we're talking weather, and that's a Minnesotan's favorite subject, straight up. Are you ready for this? Because do we need to here? Let me do the math. Do the math on Luke. What is 73? What did we say that was? That was like 21?
21 degrees. Yeah.
Okay, you ready? What my humidity is right now? This will make Andy want to throw up. 90%. According to the internet, I'm looking at my Apple weather widget.
So you can't even sweat. Like as you sweat, it
just pours out. Yeah.
It's 90% humidity right now. Like you walk outside and you're just wet.
So it's a funny thing. Like
gross.
A lot of dry climates here still use evaporative coolers, and they love them because it's fresh air from outside. It's water over like pretty much cardboard wax pads. It's dragging it in, and it works really well. But a lot of builders sell them to humid environments, and they're just like, well, it doesn't work. It's like, of course it doesn't work. You're at 90% humidity, and you're trying to add more humidity to that air, and then your body just goes, well, I can't cool myself. It's not how the system works. So
yeah, we're cool today. So we're a whopping 57 and 80% humidity, which is common when it's cool. But in the heat of today, we're not going to get up very warm. We're going to drop to 42% humidity. On Tuesday, for instance, though, we will be roughly 16% humidity and 95 degrees out.
16. You guys could make a case for humidification in the summertime.
That's about
wild.
Yeah. See, it's funny because back home we were like sort of sheltered, so it would be 40 to 42 on the hottest days Celsius, but like very low humidity, so to dry heat. But then winter would get to -5. So it's just like you don't just get hot summers and then like mild winters. It's just like you get both.
Yeah. In another month or so, it'll be, we get into August, is our hottest, driest. And it isn't usually uncommon for us to be single digit humidity. So we'll drop under 10% humidity.
It doesn't even make sense.
You literally can almost hear the trees breaking as they dry out. It's crazy.
You'd get massive house movement then there too, wouldn't you?
It is.
Yeah.
That's so wild to me. That's just so wild.
You can hear at night, like when the sun goes down, like if we're in bed or whatever, and it's been a hot day out, as it's cooling down outside, you can hear the trusses and everything in the house clicking and cracking and changing,
expanding
as it
and
moves.
contracting and retracting and
because it'll go from just what was it, Thursday it was almost 100, it was 95 or so outdoor, but as soon as the sun went down, it dropped like 25 degrees.
So then circling back, how would you get a refrigerant to suit that environment.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
To have the best, like the best.
COPs, and that's the biggest thing that I laugh about with COPs. There's like, we have a COP of 4 or 6 or 7. It's just like, yeah, the perfect.
Yeah, 47 degrees.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Constant. It's just like, you won't get that every time. So it's just like, how do you size a system to suit your year-round environment, I guess, because that's what we suffer from here is like the cold climates. They might get, if it's a cold, like what I said from Victoria, if it's a cold climate in winter but a very hot climate in summer, over summer, your heat pumps, you basically use it for nothing. But over winter, you're better off with just a standard electric system because at least it's 1-to-1. And you get your heat load in, your tank will reheat in a certain amount of time, but you suddenly change to this new refrigerant system, and over summer it's great, but you go to winter and all of a sudden it's on the backup or it's on something else, and you're taking 8 hours to reheat a tank. It's just like, well, what's more beneficial?
Well, yeah, and that's, I mean, here where I'm at, I mean, we have a temperature swing of about 130 degrees. So wintertime we can get down to minus 20 and we'll be 110 in the summer. And, for you guys, that's whatever, minus 28 to 40 above, so it is dramatic, and it is a COP issue for sure. And in the heat pump conversation, because we do get all of our air to air heat pump systems, we have what they call a balance point. And I assume you guys do too. Our balance point is usually at, on a low end outdoor unit will be, I don't know, 25 to 35 degrees above zero. And that's the point where we shut off the heat pump and go to fossil fuel or electric, because it's cheaper to run just straight electric than it is to run the heat pump, because the COP drops below 1 at that point. So
it's a lower temp here though for us at that balancing point because we have higher humidity.
Right. But we're so dry, there's no mass to the air, so it doesn't have the heat.
Yeah, so we don't even look into that here. It's just like we have electric backup on some cheaper heat pumps. Yeah. And they'll just be like, well, if you're not meeting your load within a certain amount of time, or if the ambient temperature is low, I guess they'll just run the element. They'll run resistor element. So, but there's no people don't size them for that reason. They just go, well, this will be fine. You've got, a COP of 4. You're going to be saving so much electricity, and it hits winter and they're just like, I'm not saving electricity. My gas system was technically cheaper in that way.
It is.
So, but yeah.
It is. And I think that, and unfortunately in our country, that's going to start changing too with recent legislative changes that are going to affect our power grid pricing and stuff like that, I think. And I'm not trying to predict anything out into the future because it's going to be hard to understand until it starts to happen. But dual fuel systems are popular here in the Midwest. In the northern climates, they're popular where Andy's at. They're going to gain popularity too as people are looking at the benefits of the heat pump systems. And as these heat pump systems are kind of evolving as well currently as refrigeration changes, and maybe we'll start seeing CO2. I'm not sure. But we're starting to see the hybrid approach based off of price. Not the install price is highest, but the operating cost, now you have a choice and you can toggle back and forth using pretty simple controls. It's really just automatic at this point.
You've had it for a lot with your heating and cooling, haven't you? You've had electric heating with gas backup, and it'd work off temperature, wouldn't it? So it was either straight gas or you had refrigerated, ducted. But I know a lot of your system is it would kind of be like, all right, well, you want to gain 2 degrees in your conditioned space, we can just run the electric element. But it's like, oh no, you want a big change in conditioned space, we'll run the gas system. And it would sort of work off, it had that smarts to understand even with the older systems.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see. I don't know what's, and also as we move forward, this electrification thing is in the U.S. has started to fizzle. It definitely has. We're not, we're seeing incentives go away even, I guess, minus Missoula. Missoula's really pushing hard for this stuff still. And we're seeing it kind of die off a little bit nationwide right now. And I don't know if that's politics or what. I'm not sure.
I suspect we might as well. I don't know when it'll end, but I hope it doesn't. I mean, I think regardless of whatever political belief you have, these heat pumps are more efficient. There's the science and the math proves that. There's no political argument to have there.
I know.
And it kind of comes back to that, well, what's the benefit to you? Do you want your utilities to be cheaper? I mean, if you leave the utilities alone at the current price they are, and you have a 400 or 500% efficient heat pump versus 100% efficient natural gas, I'm going to save you money.
Definitely.
That's just straight up the math.
That's the thing here too. The COPs don't lie. As long as you can get into that area, like of course you're going to go with it. And that's the thing. There's been big cost savings here, but I think it all comes down to it's what's best for the climate you're in. What's best limiting, what have you got? What do you need to change to, and everything, and the incentives. But we've seen a lot of the same where it's probably just building science. So they'll change out their gas unit and they'll put in a heat pump, say air conditioner or hot water service, but the building just isn't ready for it. So they should have done insulation or windows or something else first, and then all of a sudden the heat pump would be 4-5 times better because the building's ready for it. It's funny how much gas can mask like a leaky building, I guess, because the air temperature coming out. So,
right. Yeah. And with these system changes, it forces you to operate your house differently, like the equipment itself, right? So like in cold climates, we're not ever going to well, it's I guess true no matter what, because especially in cooling, but we're not setting back on thermostats like we used to. Like we're trying to take advantage of the ability of that gas equipment to recover quickly by, oh, well, you're not using that space all day long while you're at work. Nobody's home. You should, set your thermostat down back 10 degrees. And like, you could just recover that, and not with these heat pumps. Like,
right.
I see my biggest challenge with a 25-year-old house, or however 22-year-old house that isn't the best. Like we have great windows now, but we had to replace the original windows we had because they were failed and crap. The house that I built is not, I don't have spray foam. I'm not like super air sealed. There's all kinds of challenges we're up against. And it's not the heating season that I worry about at all, because I do have that dual fuel system, but it's during cooling. And I have a zoned forced air cooling system. If I go much more than 2 degrees on a setback, it's a disadvantage to my system because it can't quickly recover. Those heat pumps just need to operate with like very minimal delta T's and get like just maintain.
Especially inverters. Inverters, that's when they're most efficient, when they can just trickle on. They're not made, like you said, like a gas system where it's just like, all right, I'm running at 100% or nothing. It's like, I don't care the heat load you put on me, I'll run 100%, I'll recover it very quickly. Whereas an inverter works so much better if you can just let it just constantly just trickle along. And that's a lot of that is here now too. People are saying, well, don't set your house back to say 5 degrees overnight. Just let it maintain the house temperature of say 15 or 16 degrees Celsius overnight. And in the morning, it will just trickle it up to say 20. And you're not trying to do this in cold climates. You're not trying to go from 5 to 20 in the morning. It's, using all this energy to get there. Just let it just constantly run and you'll see benefits from it.
We saw it with the boilers when we started going to condensing equipment, where on like high temp systems like baseboard and stuff like that, where these customers were used to like basically shutting their heat off at night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they go so deep on a setback on their thermostats. Then they were capable with this oversized atmospheric equipment, like big cast iron boiler, and running a high temp system, like 170, 180 degrees Fahrenheit water temp in the system. You could go from like a set point of 60 overnight to 70, in, a matter of
minutes.
half an hour. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what? It would take days to do that. And so with a heat pump, but at the time, I'm talking like early 2000s, like early on when we were starting to really take condensing equipment serious, let's say 2010, we were having to re-educate our customers back then with these water systems. Like, look, you need to let this thing idle versus try to recover like you had forever. And so we were trying to convince people you have to operate them differently than before. And that's a big challenge. We're doing that with heat pumps now, right? It's not even, it's an old conversation, but it's current, right?
It's
it seems like it's, it feels like we're just constantly having to deal with that with our customers to say, you have to operate this way. And it's different. We're not trying to get them to understand building science because most of us don't even understand the building science really. Right. But it's that would be like literally pulling teeth, trying to say, here's why it happens.
Do you know how hard it is when you say to them, even say like evaporative coolers or anything, like you try to explain to someone how something works and how it works most efficient. But like if you say to someone, like with that setback or something else, you go, we'll leave it on overnight. They go, I don't want to pay for that much gas. Or I don't want to pay for that much electricity to heat my house overnight. It's like when you'd pay more if you just let it, if you let it actually ramp up and down, just let it idle and you'll pay less. But trying to explain that to them is heating their house overnight when they're not using it is cheaper than ramping their house up 10 degrees in a recovery. So.
Well, what's John Barba's favorite saying? Like the most efficient pump is the one that's not running.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's an efficiency loss regardless. And you brought it up earlier, like, 400 or 500% efficient systems. And you're trying to tell people like, they don't care. It's not a discussion that's two-way when it comes to the science behind this technology, because it's not the job of our homeowner to understand it at the level we do. And it makes it easy when they have a better understanding. That's for sure.
So here's a concept. And I hadn't thought of this until we did a more recent boiler change out. And we had quoted the customer new thermostats. I think in my haste of going through the project when I was preparing the estimate, I didn't look at their thermostats. So I knew they had 5 zones of heat in the house. It was a boiler. I quoted them 5 new thermostats because just, might as well.
Putting in a new system, let's put in the controls too.
And so we went in, we put the new thermostats in, we programmed them all. Basic Residio T4, just a nice basic thermostat. When we put those in, I program them non-programmable, right? And that's just a mindset now. We don't put in programmable thermostats for most of our customers.
And we want them to stay. Yeah,
I want them to stay.
The smart stuff, but I'm basically locking them on a temp and be like, this is just maintain.
Just maintain. And I got a call back from the customer and they're like, so how do we program these thermostats? I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, we usually have this day and night setback and, we usually do this. And on the weekends and the days and the weeks, I'm like, can we try something? And they were like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, just try this. I want you to put it where it's comfortable. And I want you to not think about what that number says. Yeah. And let the boiler do what it's supposed to do. It's going to heat your house. It's going to do it comfortably. If you have the living room that you normally like a little warmer because you occupy it during the day and you want the bedroom cool, don't ever warm the bedroom up, right? Just leave the bedroom where it's comfortable.
I think that,
and it's crazy because just like you guys were just saying, it's a concept that's so foreign after 20 years of you have to have a night setback, you have to have a daytime and a nighttime period.
So even though in saying that, we've even seen like the change from mercury to digital thermostats.
Yeah,
because mercury is so sensitive in that way, whereas. So I guess I had a bit of a lag time, whereas digital is just like snap action, and would see people that go,
so artificial, doesn't it?
Yeah, but people would just be like, 23 in here used to be warm. This is saying it's 23, but it's not. It's like, look on your mercury one. They go, it's 22. It's like, well, when that hits 23, does it feel warm? When the other one says, say, 25, and they go, yeah, it does. And it's like, well, all right, I'll set this one to say, I'll match this, I'll match your Mercury one. Yeah. And it's not looking at the temperature. It's just like, well, where do you feel comfortable?
Yeah.
And they go this, but you'd say to them, well, set your new digital thermostat up to say 25. Then they go, I don't want to use that much power. And it's like, well, that's what you were using beforehand. It's just that the thermostat was different. It read differently. So, and that was the same thing with a lot with the more efficient homes now. They just go, well, same thing. They just go, just set it where it feels comfortable. And most likely your power usage or your gas usage or whatever will be the same as what it was. It's just, yeah.
I want to turn this conversation around a little bit because I know she doesn't listen, especially not an hour into a podcast. But my wife is a person who, and she's the best person I know. Let me start out, and I'm going to pick on her a little bit. Not here to defend herself either. Yeah. She is a person who, without negotiation, there needs to be a number on the wall that tells her she's comfortable. Right. And it's not her level of understanding or anything. Yeah. She trusts the science, but she's been conditioned to think that a number is what, like, it's so important to her comfort. And I know that because I'm reminded at different highs and lows of our either heating or cooling season. It comes back to the performance of my house. When we get up into the 90s, our air conditioner, that programming of like what, because it's a multi-zone, right? When when I need the upstairs of our 2-story home to be comfortable for us to sleep, it needs to really start. Like, I'm only changing it like 1 degree all day long. I need to get rid of that change and just say, this is our locked in temp, and hold it differently and cooler than the downstairs all the time. And I'm just going to have that stratification thing happening, because as soon as it's not 69 in our bedroom to go to bed, as soon as it's 70, she's telling me, you know what I mean?
It's funny though. So my best refrigeration teacher, he said a similar thing. He'd walk around a lot of commercial buildings and you'd have different people in the offices.
Yeah.
It's too hot, it's too cold, it's too hot, it's too cold. So once a month, he'd walk around with his sling psychrometer and he'd just go, perfect temperature, perfect humidity. But he'd say it loud enough so everyone could hear it. And he'd turn all the thermostats off. He'd make them remote into like the plant room so they couldn't see them. He's just like, we'll delete all these. He goes, they're not working correctly. And he just set it at, say, like 21 degrees, 22 degrees, 50% RH. But he'd walk around with this device and he'd just sling it around. Anyway, he's just like, oh, it's perfect. Wouldn't hear complaints. The building hadn't changed. Literally, I'd just walk in and it's like, that guy said that this is a perfect tent in here and I'm comfortable. And I'd just be like, I am comfortable.
Early in my apprenticeship, we did a project it was a bank. They called it the count room. And it was basically where like all the tellers would process paper checks, way before digital scanning and whatnot. So they would look at the check, type in the amount, verify this and whatever, and then it would get processed. So there's this room with, it probably had 15 or 20 people in it, in kind of like cubicle spaces. And there were columns. It was in the basement, no windows. And it had this one large, HVAC unit, a hot water coil and chilled water. We replaced that unit with a new modern unit. And in the process of it, the journeyman that I was working for had been doing the maintenance on this building forever. And he and the maintenance man for the building came up with this idea and said, well, this room, we have such a wide variety of people, young, old, men, women, whatever. And it's always hot and it's always cold and they're always complaining about whatever. He goes, can we put in more thermostats? And we were like, what? I mean, no, that's going to be terrible. And he's like, don't even connect them. Just put them on the wall. And so we put the old Mercury round dial thermostats. We put 4 of them in, and the unit ran off of a remote sensor, just monitoring return air temp with constant fan. Yeah. And it was connected to the unit and maintained, 69 degrees. And these 4 thermostats were on the walls out in the
They're all
in
set
the
to
space.
different temps too.
And the guy comes in, on Monday morning, whatever, after this change out, and the people are like, "Oh, we got a new unit. That's cool. Look at all the thermostats." And he's like, "Yep, set them wherever you want." Right? If you're too cold over here, you can go ahead and turn that up a little bit, and you can turn yours down a little bit, and it'll just and everybody was just ecstatic. They were so happy that they had control over their temperature. And they didn't do anything.
We got to wrap this up, but
Yeah.
the whole concept of not having thermostats on the wall and operating these buildings at an efficiency and comfort level that oftentimes people don't realize you can achieve is such a cool concept, but I almost feel defeated in in the quest to do that for my customers because of, like I brought up, for instance, Heather, like they just want that number.
They're being programmed. They're being programmed into that condition.
We're in
in the matrix.
I know in other countries it's different, right? But like you go to Europe and most places you don't have any physical control other than like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the hell that means. You know what I mean?
Doesn't matter. Right?
It doesn't matter. I know, but let me you have that conversation with your wife and then we'll talk about it on a podcast and let me know how.
We've had the same thing in it. Like my whole career, it's just been, you get the wife or the husband that just go, "What's the ideal temperature to set this at?" And I always go, between 18 and 22, wherever you feel comfortable. And then I'll just let them argue as I leave. Because otherwise, I say, 22 degrees. And he goes, "I feel like we're using too much power." And she goes, "That's not hot enough." So there's this complaint. So I'll just go, between this range. And you just.
Well, Luke told me that I should set it at 23.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want to be the blame man.
Don't put me in on your group text, Mr.
Yeah.
I don't want to be part of that. Yeah. All right, guys. Look, this is 2 hours now, Luke. You're like an honorary co-host to the Make Trade Great Again podcast. And I didn't start this episode out by telling everybody that we want to hear from you. We want your feedback. We want your questions. We want you to text us or email us. Andy, give them a way to get a hold of us, would you?
Yep. The easiest, that we're going to see all the time, maketradesgreatagain@gmail.com. Send us an email, leave us your name, leave us some contact info. And then, just share something with us. That's a good way. You can get us on all of the podcast streaming apps. Almost all of them now have a place to leave a review or send a question or messages, something like that. That works. Otherwise, you can get Eric, Mechanical Hub, on IG or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or all the other socials. You can get me at Mick_Plum, primarily on the Instagram.
Yeah.
So,
and Luke,
and where can we find Luke?
Yeah, I was going to say, I just realized I didn't ask you.
That is the longest, I must comment, because I've heard it multiple times. The longest email I reckon Gmail would allow, wouldn't it?
It's the max characters.
Typing it in, I was just like, does this end? So, mine is, at FlameTechHC for Instagram. Same thing for Facebook.
Awesome. We'll put that in the description of both episodes too. All right, guys. It was another good one. I can't believe another hour. These are long ones. This was fun. Cool conversation. I love the tech stuff.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Luke, again for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Been my pleasure.
All right, guys. Signing off. Stick around.
Have a good one.